Welcome, my friends, to the Quantum Shamans presented by Moshi, the Ministry of Shamanic Healing and Integration, bringing you insights into the spiritual secrets of the mind and the universe around you. We are here to help you on your spiritual journey and path of healing. And now your hosts, David and Anthony.
We talk about weight. Hucha means weight. It means heaviness. It's one of those syllables of the spiritual language, which is energy. Energy is either heavy or it's light. And neither one's bad. You know, one of the metaphors in the mountains is, a crate of apples is heavy. Carrying it 7 hours back to your village is hard work. It wears you out. It's hucha. But when you get there, it's food. Mm-hmm. And you get to eat on it. And everyone in your family gets to eat on it. So you get to eat that hucha and you get to transform it into something beautiful that is helping others. And just those little moments like that, you change the field for that person. So these limiting beliefs and stuff that we walk around with, these generational curses, I see them as gravity wells. Okay, and the earth's like a gravity well, the sun's like a gravity well. So it's density, it's reality. And it starts to pull hucha from the environment, from other people. You ever notice two people who sit down, especially in our culture, they sit down and they start introducing themselves to each other, and what do they talk about? Hey, well, I do this. Well, how much do you make? Well, I make this much, competition. Or they start talking to each other and they start talking about the worst thing that happened to them.
Oh, if you think that's bad, you should see how bad it is for me. Yeah. I like to listen to people actually do that where they compare, like, I'm having a harder time than you are. Yeah,
because in our culture, suffering, it goes back to that Protestant Christian belief, suffering makes you better. Mm-hmm. There's some reward for suffering. You're going to get something great because if you suffered more, or the universe owes you something if you suffered the most. And so everyone's putting all their attention, all their awareness into suffering, and they're sitting there and they're bonding over their traumas, and they're just bringing each other down, and they're sharing hucha, they're sharing weight. They're pulling it from each other because they have wounds inside of themselves. Those wounds are pulling in hucha. They walk down the street. They hear someone over there screaming at someone else because they almost got hit by a car. They're pulling that hucha into them. What if they were the one that almost got hit? Mm-hmm. Or what if they were the one driving? And all of this is hypothetical. It's all in the mind. Mm-hmm. But the mind and the body doesn't understand that what happens in the mind isn't real. Mm-hmm. There's no difference to the body. It's the same thing. So it's just pulling in more and more trauma.
And it reacts, and the sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and illness arises.
Exactly. So when we do something like the Hucha Miqui, or even when grace just happens and we've done nothing except for shine and beam our own light, broadcast who we really are, when we do something like that, it can lift some of that weight up off of a person. And when that weight's lifted up off of them, suddenly their imprints, their traumas aren't right on the top, So now when they go home and their children are trying them, that's the child's job, is to try the parents, and the children are sitting there, fighting for control or fighting for their own existence, the parent can see it that way. They might not react and scream at the child. They might not pass down trauma, generational trauma to the child. They might go home, the child might do that, and because we've lifted this little bit of weight off of them, they might suddenly be able to share that gift with that child. Just that moment. It might only be one moment in that child's whole life, but one moment they really got to connect with their parent, and their parent didn't judge them. Their parent didn't put them down. Their parent didn't act like a parent, but acted like someone who loved them, who really brought them in. In that moment, that could change a person's life forever. Those moments stick with you. Mm-hmm. Trauma moments do too, but those moments stick with you and they help to propel you in life.
Mm-hmm. I love it.
Love is always the greater power.
Hey, that's what you started off saying, didn't you?
Yep.
Right in here. I love it. So where it's just bringing me back to the Paqo Kuna tradition.
Absolutely.
So we talked about where you started and where you got in there. Let's talk about a little bit about your training and what happened to you, and let's talk about what is a Paqo.
Okay, well, Paqo actually means nature mystic.
Mm-hmm.
We use the word shaman because that's what people understand. And, I'll take this moment to share something that is a big debate within the shamanic community.
Yeah, shamanologists get mad when other people listen, that's not a shaman. Hey, it's just a term.
Yeah, yeah. So the origin of the word is Tungus Siberian. So really the only quote-unquote shaman is Tungus Siberian. Mm-hmm. But what happened is that word got brought back. And it got brought back by certain Russian traders and priests and by German traders. They were Dutch then, that had spent time in the Far East there, almost to China, and had spent time in those communities. And they brought back this understanding. Because at this time, the pagan traditions of Europe had already been pretty much decimated, most of them. So they brought back this understanding that there was something else. There was something that wasn't Christianity. And it was out there, and it had these certain beliefs. And it had these certain structures to it. Now, so anything that bared resemblance to that then started being called shamanism. Okay, so there was these pagan beliefs that were more based on superstition than anything else. And then there was these shamanic beliefs which had elaborate rituals and beauty and were a religion all of their own, even before Christianity and before many of the pagan traditions had started. So they started going around the world, and as science started to grow and anthropologists started to be born, they started calling all these things shamanism. First it was the priests. They came to the New World. They saw the beliefs of the native people, and they said, oh, those type of beliefs are called shamanism. Mm-hmm. That's what we call them. And then that spread, and it spread to any indigenous culture that had certain qualities to it. And these certain qualities are the same qualities that the Siberian spiritual practices had. The first one is animism, that everything is alive, imbued with spirit, and has a consciousness all its own. The next thing is that we can develop relationships. Now, this is when it starts to become shamanism. We can develop relationships to that animated quality inside of each thing, and that it's unique inside of each thing. And that the way we do that is through ceremony. Ritual and ceremony, we start to create relationship. And that's the same in our human world. Right here, this is a little ritual ceremony. Mm-hmm. You're created this podcast, it's a ritual. It has a certain flow to it. People come, they sit, they talk. That's all ritual. This whole place is a ritual. People come, they drink kava. It's a ritual. They sit together. You go on a date with someone, go out to eat. Well, when you sit down at the table, they bring out all of your ritual implements. You get a fork, a knife, a spoon, a napkin. They bring out the food. There's a certain way that you eat it. They bring out the salads first. That's all ritual. And through the years, these ancient medicine priests learned rituals that correlated and made sense with the spirits they were trying to communicate with. It isn't that you do the same ritual for every spirit, because different spirits want different things. And different things make them feel comfortable. And if we get into a deeper quality of that, it's because those things hold a vibration that is from that spirit. Mm-hmm. If we start to see spirits as threads of the weaving of the universe, then we realize, if this spirit likes rum, it's because rum itself has the vibrational quality of the spirit within it. So we're doing things, or maybe the spirit likes this incense. So when we light this incense, there's more of a chance that spirit's going to feel comfortable in the room. Why? Well, because part of that incense is that spirit. So by burning it, you're creating more of that spirit's vibration in the physical. So ritual creates relationship. So that's when it starts to become shamanic in a sense. It is a religion, but it's a free-form religion where the individual gets to play pope in the religion. They get to learn off of their teachers, and then they get to modify things to be right for their spirits and right for their environment and right for the way they work. Mm-hmm. First, by honoring the teachings, making sure they got those down. Then they start to become an artist with those teachings. They start to play with it. They start to see changes. And so really, when when the priests came to South America especially, they didn't see a difference between the Tungus Siberian tradition and many of these traditions within Peru, basically, for the most part. They saw them as they could have been the same tradition. Certain things are different because culturally certain things are different, but they saw that as something that happened. So, getting back to your question, Paqo Kuna means nature mystic. It's the word shaman in Quechua. Paqo Kuna. You also have Hompacruna. Hompacruna is a healing person with the power to heal. So there's different types of priest there. And every culture has their own name for a priest. But the Paqo is a unique type of priest. They're a priest that relies on the nature spirits, and that's something else that is shamanism. In organized religions and in animism, oftentimes the prayers were more general into what we might call the quantum field. The prayers were to the big God. The prayers was to whoever had the biggest God, and that's where you put your energy. In shamanism, you do that, you honor that, but that is just a gateway to connect deeper with the universal multiplicity. So you start to honor each spirit for what it is. Well, the spirit of water. I'm not going to go to the spirit of fire if what I need is the gift of the spirit of water. I'm going to go to the spirit of water and work with it and do the rituals that my client or I need to grow that only water can give me. And in that way I'm honoring the earth. And this is something that we need today. Because we are in such a... We view the earth as a resource. We view the earth as something we're mining things up out of, or what it gives us in crops, or how if we can get a good piece of land to build our house. That's how we start to view earth, and how we view the earth is how we view our physical body. So if we start to allow people if we start to really get into the mindset that you can own a piece of earth, and that earth becomes yours, and that earth is someone else's, and the things in this earth are mine, and the things in that earth are yours, then this body can be owned by someone else. If I just unceremonially rip into the earth to get to the oil, without any care of where that oil is going, or to get coal, and I just let that pollute while I get what I want out of it, then I'm going to let the same thing happen to my body. I'm going to let people break my boundaries. I'm going to let people treat my body badly. And if I do that, I'm not going to have any respect for myself. So if I don't have respect for the earth, I'm not going to have respect for myself. So this is why I think especially the Paqo Kuna tradition has the ability to transform the world, the modern world that we live in, because it reminds us, oh yeah, the earth is our mother. She is a being. She might not speak in English, but she is a being, and she has her own reality. And if I can start to connect with her energy, and I can learn how to be one with her again, then I'm going to know where is best for me to be. If I'm building a house, she's going to help me know where to put it. And she's going to help me to know how to build it so that it beautifies the land. Because we're co-creators in this reality. We didn't create the reality. We didn't choose all the cards we were dealt. But we get to decide how we're going to behave within them. We get to decide how we're going to navigate what we have. And as we do that, we change reality. We beautify the world around us. That's the path of beauty. It's one of the paths that we follow. You can't really step into wisdom until you've stepped into beauty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So your training, when you started training in the Paqo Kuna tradition, you started with Juan.
With Juan, yeah.
Right, and then you had some other teachers too, right?
Many other teachers.
Yeah, many other teachers.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm not going to name them all.
You don't have to.
But in Queros, especially, I worked with a man named Don Marcus Apaza. And Don Marcus Apaza really taught me Munai. Mm-hmm. And the best way to explain this is we have something we call Aini, harmony with life, harmony in the environment. So we did a despacho, Haiwa Riqui in Quechua. And at the end of that, we waited about 4 hours till almost midnight. And then we went up to one of the highest points in the village. And this is the village where my goddaughter lives. It's called Kiko. And we went up to one of the highest points, not the peak of Kiko Kuchu, which is the glacier mountain, but one of the highest points right there in the village of Kiko. And there's this thick fog that comes through Queros, because it's 16,000 to 21,000 feet above sea level. So you're in the clouds. So we're sitting there, and he's just nonchalantly, he has the despacho. He's ringing the bell to call the spirits and everything. And he just nonchalantly looks up at the sky, and he's just like, chaska, the word for star, chaska, pichai, blows 3 times. The mist and the clouds didn't part. They just weren't there anymore. They didn't exist anymore. And in front of my eyes, I am seeing more stars than I have ever seen in my entire life. I'm not on any mind-altering substance, mind you, but they're swirling. There's so many stars that they're just swirling. They're dancing in the sky above us. And he's completely unaffected by it. Doesn't even seem to notice. And just continues with the despacho, putting it into the fire and burning it. So I received big teaching from him. In Chakrapata, in the village of Chakrapata, which is where Wamalipa is, the sacred mountain Wamalipa, I worked with Dani Lipo Kespi, and he was El Presidente at the time. So he was holding the highest rank in that area at the time. And he was a very beautiful master. And there it was real, the teachings I learned from him was all about really bringing in the essence of your teachers, bringing in the essence of who has led you to where you are at this time, and being able to draw and source from them, to be able to bring through their gifts for someone else, to be that bridge between this teacher they can never have because they can never meet them, and you get to bring that to them. You get to bring that purely to them without any corruption. So a lot of the teachings that I received from him was about that. Another teacher I want to note is Don Abraham Alberto Fernandez Santa Cruz, who became my primary instructor and my primary teacher and friend and guide. And his teachings were of a whole different lineage. He was not Quero. It wasn't the Incari lineage, which was Quero, or the Huascar lineage, which is from Cusco. His lineage was something else. It was the Corilazo lineage. And he took me as a Alto Masayoc apprentice under him, and he taught me so many things. So those are a few of the teachers I've had. I've also, that's all Paqo Kuna. I know you all talk also about mind-altering substances, things like that, teacher plants. So I also have received instruction in the curandero traditions of Peru, Huachumero, which is the San Pedro cactus, mescaline-containing cactus. And so I also know how to do masadas based around that tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you become an Alto Masayoc?
I became an Alto Masayoc with Juan.
With Juan?
Yeah, with Juan. But Juan is a Spanish person. He's a Caucasian.
Uh-huh.
My first indigenous teacher who trained me in as an Alto Masayoc was Don Abraham.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then you became a Kurak.
Well, that was from Juan.
Yeah.
That was originally from Juan, yeah, because his tradition is the Kurak tradition, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But sometimes you take a step back, you know? You have to start over. Just like I mentioned some other priests that I worked with that taught me some very deep things, and they're Papa Masayoc.
Mm-hmm.
So there's very deep things to learn in every realm of the tradition. There's something we call the Kamaska. And the Kamaska means someone who has a mystical experience that never got trained. Right? They have a mystical experience. That mystical experience is something so strong that they know it's real, and and it changes some aspect of their life. Okay, so
all aspects of their life.
Exactly,
Mike, or in your case.
So Kamaska, some of them are struck by lightning to show to the village that they are Kamaska. There's another understanding about the getting struck by lightning as well, and that is that they've already received the call and are ignoring it. They don't want to do it because it's a hard life. You don't because here we get this idea that if you're a priest or whatever, then you just do your priestly things and that's it.
Yeah, you don't have challenges or anything.
Yeah. That's the world we live in. Everyone wants to live for themselves and attain as much material possessions and perceived success as they possibly can, because that's how our society programs people. Yeah, and it's a much tougher life when you're living for others.
Absolutely.
But it's much, much more what's the word I'm looking for? It's much more I can't think of the word. It's on the tip of my tongue.
But, it happens to me all the time.
Yeah, it's beneficial is what, or I'll come back to it.
It'll come back. Poof. I call that poof when it just disappears.
Yeah.
When you lose your line. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, in our culture, we also have this other thing, and it's part of the cultural nightmare that's passed down, is a cultural curse. And it's not how our country started. Our country started as an agrarian culture that was really based around farming and things like that and what you could produce. But it became a culture based around finances. And so there became this idea, especially in the 1980s, it kind of took root. And it was prosperity spirituality. And it was this idea that if you're following everything God wants you to do, and if you're on the right path, then prosperity comes to you without any issues. That you don't have to do anything else but just follow your path, and you'll know you're on your right path because everything will always fall in line. Well, that's not the way it really works. That's a half truth, and half truths are dangerous. So that's not really the way it works. So especially someone who's just turned on spiritually, if they're looking for confirmation from the material, and you will get confirmation from the material, but if they think, if I'm on the right path, I'm going to become wealthy and successful on this path, and it's just going to open everything up for me, they're not going to do the hard work to actually achieve that. And when things start to get hard, they're going to say, well, I must be on the wrong path, or I need a new teacher. I got to go find this other teacher because what I learned, I thought it was right, but now I have to let go of it because too many challenges have popped up in my life. So really, our spirituality has to create what we call corn and potatoes. It has to create something that sustains us through rough times. If it doesn't, then it's just all fluff, And that's one of the cultural nightmares that are passed down. Why do I call it a cultural nightmare? Because our culture doesn't want to view reality outside of economy. It doesn't want to review so it wants to at all times hold that as the highest status of we're on the right path. And and if you're failing at that, if you're failing at becoming independently wealthy, then you're just obviously not working hard enough, or you're just not listening. So that's a real danger that all of us in this culture have. That's a curse that we all have to deal with, and that we all do deal with on a day-to-day basis. And we need a spirituality that can actually fit into that. Many of my teachers would be, in Western terms, impoverished. They live in little huts. They farm their own food. When they don't get a good crop, they don't eat much. That's the way it is. But yet they can lay on hands and heal you. And they can heal your soul.
Happiest people you've ever met.
Absolutely. Because they're not in the rat race.
Yeah, they're not owned by anything.
Yeah. Yeah, they actually are living life.
Yeah.
And so, people think that, if they're a shaman, they live on the edge of the village or they live there and they get everything from just doing their healings and things like that. No, those shamans, they're still farming. Mm-hmm. They're still helping others build houses in the community. They're still growing food. They're still doing all the chores that everyone else in the community has to do. And then they have to take on the added responsibility of doing ceremonies and trying to heal the soul. Trying to help the person heal from tragedies that happen to them. And that's a lot of responsibility to take on. When 90% of your day, really it's not that much. That's our culture. Wants to say 90% of their day is based on survival. No, once you're actually living in a community like that, it's about 15% of your time goes toward your survival. Mm-hmm. The rest is kind of free time. Mm-hmm. But it's also spent walking between your fields because you don't grow your crops in your village. Your village is too high. You have fields sometimes that are down in the jungle. So, during the hot season, you go down to the jungle to farm. And then you bring it back up to the top of the mountain. So, yeah, that's one of the ideas that people get is that, the entrepreneur, and that the shamans are entrepreneurs.
Right.
We're really their community members.
Right.
Yeah. Their culture is much different. It's not based on economy. It's based on love.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the word came to me. It's living a life of service to others is far more rewarding than...
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Living a selfish life. And
I came from that kind of life.
Attain as much as you possibly can.
You're right.
That you can't take with you.
Well, it's just like Zane's talking about, because I can totally relate with lack mindsets that were passed down and things I've had to deal with and hold me back because that's the way I was taught was if you have... My dad told me, as long as you have money, you're happy. That's how it works. That's kind of how it works. And I worked really hard to create that and create businesses and stuff in the past and do that. And I made money, but it was fun to have money and do things. But it was also, it wasn't who I meant to be. I meant to be this. And people do get confused, do you love your life, this glamorous life? I was like, well, it's not what you think. That's not how it is. I spend a lot of time working primarily on myself. I work a lot on me because I know that medicine comes from me. My world comes from me. So if I can't make me the best I can, how can I help anyone else?
Yeah. Yep.
So there's a lot, just like how Zane was saying, I still gotta grow. I grow my own food and things too. I do that kind of stuff.
Yep.
I still gotta make everything happen.
Someone newly sober, it gets into a program like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, and they just have this. They go from completely cloudy to a new sense of clarity they've never felt before, and they want to just share that with everyone and help everyone they can. But it's just a distraction from really getting to the root of their issues.
Yeah.
And you definitely have to, especially when you're in that mindset, you got to fall down pretty hard to realize, so I got to work on myself first before I can help anyone else.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that hard fall throw you back into a relapse.
Yeah, it's and that happens with the spiritual world too. A lot of addictions are actually spiritual crises. They're oftentimes created by a spiritual crisis, and we don't have many people in our culture that are skilled at helping and holding someone through a spiritual crisis, because our culture is like. And not to put down psychotherapy at all, but a lot of times it's just skimming the surface.
Right.
Skimming the surface, taking care of what's bothering you right now. Something else came up, skim the surface. And there's an inexhaustible font of things that are going to come up. As long as we're not going into the deep water with a client, going down into those dark, murky places with them, the original wounds aren't healing.
Yeah.
And those are those imprints that are gravity wells that are pulling in all this weight from the world around them. And that weight gives importance to that imprint. The fact that it weighs so much, the fact that it makes them feel so heavy, and that they're lifting it up and they have to carry it. See, that's one of the things we learn is, oh, I don't have to carry this, though.
Mm-hmm.
I can let it go.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel it and then realize, oh, that's all right. It's all right for me to feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can let it go. I can let it pass. It's like weather. It's all right for a storm to come through. That's weather.
Mm-hmm.
That's natural. But it's a real problem that if a storm comes through and then all you do for the next week is worry about the next storm, that's a real issue. If it impacts you that much that you can't live your life, you can't go back to being who you were before, then it's bound to repeat itself. You start creating a cycle, a pattern.
The loop in the matrix.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just added one more imprint to an original wound. So now it has one more gravity well that can pull in more hucha, that can pull in more weight and weigh you down.
Mm-hmm. And like you were saying, there's not a lot of people yet, I like to say, that have the ability to sense and make these changes. And I know you do a lot of hard work helping other people learn, because I'm one of them. And I'm very grateful for that. You showed up in my life at a perfect time, of course, because everything ends up in a perfect way. So tell us about what you're doing, Zane. Tell us about your organization and what you're doing and your goals.
Absolutely. Well, I'm the founder of the Wild Hearts Medicine Society and the Qatari tradition of cross-cultural shamanism. And our goal really is to enrich the modern world with the wisdom of the ancestors. And wisdom is something that isn't passed down through teachings alone. It's something a person has to live. They have to actually find it inside of themselves.
Knowledge plus experience.
Exactly, yeah. So in that goal, I do different types of programs. One of them that you know very well is the apprenticeship program. We call it the Art of Spiritual Healing. And that is a 6 to 9 month program. 6 to 9 months because we can now tailor it a little bit to people. And you're one of the mentors of that program. And we can tailor that a little bit to people so they can go through it in as quick as 6 months. But most of the time, it's going to take them close to 9 months to go through that whole thing. And it's a complete training, And because we're working with it online, we get to get little bits of that, just like in the traditional apprenticeship. We don't just get an information dump over a weekend that you then surf through and have to try to figure out what all of that means, and it just becomes a bunch of good sound bites and cliches that you can't apply to your life at all. We get to go into it and we get to experience it, and we get to slowly learn these medicine ways, the way they were meant to be. And this tradition has roots. It's not just a hodgepodge of things. One of the tasks that my teachers gave me was to adapt it to the Western mind. And some people would say, well, why does it need to be adapted?
It's a living tradition.
Exactly. It doesn't. It has never not existed, and every generation gets to redefine it for themselves. And that's where cross-cultural shamanism comes into this. Though I was born kind of in a farming community in a sense, where a lot of people garden, a lot of people farmed, and hunting and farming made up a large portion of the subsistence that people had. I didn't grow up in the pastoral lifestyle of the Q'ero, So their entire tradition is based around survival out of that type of agrarian culture, And a lot of their Aini is based around that. And since the destruction of the Incan Empire, things got a lot harder for the indigenous in South America. Because the empire was something beautiful. It took taxes in the form of food, in the form of textiles, in the form of potato seeds, which was the greatest tax you could have. Because you can grow potatoes without seeds. But if an area was hit hard and all their crops were destroyed, then the empire would send those seeds. If there was a disaster and their houses were destroyed, they would send people from other communities to help rebuild their community. If the llamas had died in a community, well, the empire had a bunch of llama that it could send to that community. It was a true experiment in the redistribution of living energy, the redistribution of wealth.
Living as an organism.
Exactly.
One organism.
And in those times, the Paqo tradition and the other shamanic traditions were kind of merged together, and they had the grand look at the future. At enlightenment was the goal. Okay, and that's when Peru had all kinds of Alto Masayoks and all kinds of Curacacuyac and Inca Maucu, and they had the Inca, which was the emperor, and an Inca was a shaman. An Inca was a medicine man. The emperor was. That meant that they had refined their ability so much that they could redistribute the living energies of the entire empire in a honest and good way. That's what it really meant. And that's why they were called the glowing ones, because they actually could produce a physical glow with their body that represented their ability to redistribute the living energies. So at that time, the goal was to become someone like the Inca, an enlightened one. Now, after the Incan Empire was destroyed, that still was the goal, but now life became a lot harder. There wasn't the safety net that the empire gave them anymore. So a lot of the work of the Aini became just in survival. Just in how do I need to have good Aini with the earth so that the earth will produce enough for me and my family to live through the next cycle. And that became the goal. And so our culture, we have a whole different paradigm here. We don't worry so much about surviving or having enough food. Even someone who's homeless, a lot of times, just the generosity of others, they end up getting enough to survive. So in our culture, it isn't about survival anymore. We can once again apply these teachings toward enlightenment and toward where we are going as a species instead of where we are going as an individual. And that's something very beautiful. So that's the reason for cross-cultural shamanism. That's the reason, so these teachings are almost strictly as pure as possible. But there's certain things in our culture, in our community, that they don't have in theirs. And so we have to address those concerns because we are Western Paqos. Some people ask me why I don't host more trips to Peru to work with my teachers. And that's because my teachers, one, they wondered why I was even there. Yeah. Why are you here? Why are you learning this? Why don't you go to your Paqos in your country? Why would you make this dangerous journey here and hike up these mountains? You could die here. Why would you do this? And when I explained it to them that there wasn't people who really held that energy here anymore, they wanted to train me to be one of those people. And it's much more important now. My task is to awaken the sacred in our land. Yeah, it's beautiful to go to Peru and have a sacred vacation there. But the real work is finding that same sacredness here in America, here in your backyard, and forming a relationship with nature and the nature spirits here so that in the next 10, 20, 100 years, people are like, whoa, we have these things. They're not looking for it in South America. They're not looking for it in Mexico anymore because it has become a global phenomenon. And it's part of the prophecy of a brand new world that is coming up. But that brand new world isn't done just by us working really hard on perfecting ourselves. It's us working really hard at dreaming a new dream for nature. Because Pachamama, our mother, the earth, we're her children. We're co-creators with her. She wants us to help her dream the next chapter of this planet, the next chapter of life. And that next chapter of life isn't just in Peru or just in places that are where the indigenous cultures are rich and strong. That next chapter takes all of the earth, reawakening the energetic grid of the entire earth so that we're living in a time like they lived in. We're living in a time before the Dark Ages. We can enter into a brand new golden age, but we need her help. We can't do it alone. We need the earth's help to get there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One of the things I love especially about this year, now I'm a mentor, and I would say I'm learning more this time around than last time, is what I would say.
Absolutely.
And I always am blown away by how the medicine comes through you and how it's I don't mean blown away, I mean mind expanded. My mind's expanded always by how the medicine comes through you and how its design flows. And just because, when it first started, I'm doubtful. My ego mind's afraid, like, you're not ready for this, man. You've only done one and try through this thing, and you're not good enough for this, and all kinds of things. And then, my spiritualized mind, the parts of me, or my spirit talks to me, and it says, oh, no, you're right where you're meant to be. It always is that way. And I'm like, oh, don't you see? I'm like,
yeah, we grow little by little, and we learn little by little. And that's why I do have people who have taken the apprenticeship program 6, 7, 8 times, because there's always something new to learn. And as the leader of that program, the teachings are not always exactly the same either from year to year. Certain ones are, and there's a framework underneath it all that is very flexible, very malleable, but it's still a strong framework that all of the processes of personal development are based on. But the other part is intuition. You have to tune into the environment, into the universe at that moment. What is important for this group of students to learn? What's going to help them become who they need to be to change the world? And so we push it more that way. There's some years, every year we work on healing ourselves and others. Every year we learn the healing techniques. I don't like technique.
Yeah.
But the healing techniques are actually artistic skills that we learn to paint with a broad stroke. But every year we learn those things, but some years we really focus on healing. Some years we're really focused on wisdom. Different years bring up different things because the quality is needed. A different quality is needed. Especially right when COVID hit, that first year of that, it was all about training people to really do soul retrieval. It was really based around that more than anything else. I got all the other stuff, but I put this extra emphasis on that. Why? Because we went through a global trauma. We went through a trauma that we're still recovering from, and it's such a deep trauma that it created cultural and physical soul fractures. And those soul fractures are not quickly to change, and they're not quickly to heal. And if we don't have anyone skilled at doing that, if we don't have anyone who knows how to help people put their lives back together, then we're going to be in this kind of purgatory state that we're in right now. We're in a purgatory state. COVID happened. It changed all of reality, really. And we don't know what that change means yet.
Everybody's just living in a state of fear, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly. Exactly. And that is trauma. That is a soul fracture. And until they get that soul piece back, they're not going to be able to step outside of that fear. And if they're not able to step outside of that fear, then when the next disaster happens, which is going to happen, because that's the world we live in, it has disasters. When the next one happens, they're not going to have the ability to recover from it. And then they're going to pass that down to generations of people. And it's just like what we saw with the Depression, the Great Depression. When that happened, that got passed down. And it led to it was responsible as much as anything else for the culture that we live in today that is so obsessed with obtaining things. Money,
you have to stockpile as much as you possibly can, just in case.
Get all that toilet paper.
Yeah, exactly. and they passed that down, and that actually got passed down to the next generation, which was the 50s. And and then that got passed into the 60s. Of course, the 60s in this country, some amazing things happened that really stirred things up and started some major change. But all of that basically came to a head in the 1980s with the greed mentality. It came to this, to this fevered pitch. And since then, we have been kind of backing off from that little by little through the 90s, through the early 2000s. And then we just hit this next trauma. This COVID trauma hit. And there was a lot of healed people on this planet at that point. Now there's a lot of wounded people that need healing. And if we can be there and to help them to put those pieces back together, then they can see new possibilities. They can see that even in traumas, there are opportunities. And that's something that you can't see when you're stuck in the fear-based mentality. When you're stuck in fight or flight, you can't see opportunity. Nothing is new in the world. Nothing new comes in, nothing new goes out. You don't grow. We need to heal from that. And that was why that year, especially when COVID hit, I really trained people deeply on soul retrieval and destiny retrieval, things like that, how to create a new world, how to dream a new world. Now I'm really focusing even more on that dreaming aspect.
Yeah.
Dreaming a new world into being. How can we really be the dream weavers?
Yeah.
Manifest destiny.
Yeah. I can agree with that, because that's kind of how the work's been coming through me, is helping people to learn to accept their imagination, the power of the imaginative mind, and how it's underdeveloped. Like, I like to go into spaces with people and I'll talk about that. I'll talk about imagination or thoughts, and I'll ask them, what are thoughts? They're energy. They're forms of energy. What is imagination? Same thing.
Yeah.
It's just we've been taught that it's unreal somehow. So it's underdeveloped. It's something that isn't developed. And that's something that's developed vastly and wildly in me over the last couple of years. And so I don't even like to use the word. Because when you use the word imagination, there's a bunch of things tied to it, because I can feel the energy of it. Like, I don't like to use the word trauma, because it's a word that, I don't like it. Data,
it triggers.
Data works better. It doesn't feel the same. Just trying to use so when I have someone sit down, we go into breathing, and I'll ask them to picture something, or use your words that come through me, or your disciplined imagination. Bring that through, the disciplined, because that's word, not just your imagination, your disciplined imagination.
And people think that the imagination has no role.
Right.
Everything that's beautiful in our world came from imagination. So it has a role, and it has a deep role in spiritual awakening. And that's something I really train people in the apprenticeship program.
Your third eye vision.
Exactly. And even more than that, when you can start seeing from the eyes of your heart. We're a mental culture, so we're always up here. But when we can learn to actually drop down, and we learn that there's a whole other brain right here, and we can experience the whole world from that brain, that's a game changer for a lot of people. It was for me.
Me too.
And so that's what we're really doing in the apprenticeship program. And it's a path of a wounded healer, because you're learning to heal yourself, because that's the only way to gain the ability to do it for others. So it is a very beautiful path. And the next apprenticeship will be starting in July 10th.
And is that open? Who's that open to?
It's open to everyone.
Whoever the mystery calls to.
Yeah, absolutely. If you feel called, you can check out my site. It's not up at this moment, because I've just switched over to a new platform and doing some rebuilding on my site. But Wild Hearts Medicine Society, it's actually just wildhearts.com, wildheartsmedicine.com. And it will have all the information of the courses and classes that I have coming up.
Good.
We also have a big event coming up in June over summer solstice, June 18th through the 23rd, up in the mountains of Virginia. And we're going to be doing the traditional apprenticeship, or the traditional initiations, the great initiation.
I plan on being there.
What's that?
I said I plan on being there.
Awesome. I hope you are. Yeah, and that is also open to everyone. I mean, the core group is going to be the mentors and their proteges, but it's open to anyone if they feel called to that, because that's really where you're going to learn about reweaving that net between sacred sites. And we're actually going to be aligning our ceremonies, because we're at summer solstice, with some ceremonies that are going on in Peru every year at that same time, which is winter solstice for them. But it's a time of dreaming. It's a time of planting the seeds for your new dream. And we're actually going to be aligning and doing those rituals at the land celebration. We're actually going to be doing that pilgrimage inside of the initiation ceremonies. So it's going to be very beautiful, getting beyond some limiting beliefs and really planting the seeds of your future, and we're going to be doing all that during that time. Another event I have coming up is Healing Life Force Masada, just down the road here at Goddess Elite, on May 26th. And that's a ceremony of healing. Now, it's not just healing people from chronic disease or from sicknesses. Healing's much greater than that. It's how you take what's going on in your life to create context to transform your life, to live your life into the future. So it's a great place for people who are spiritually minded, who just feel stuck in their path. Even if they don't feel stuck and they're just ready for the next step of their path, then it's a forum to allow the spirits to come through and speak with them and to tell them certain things that can help them move forward in their work. And it's also just sitting in that circle, because we create a current or a vibration in that circle, it amplifies spiritual gifts. So if you're already a healer, you come to an event like that, it actually it ups your ampage so that you can hold more energy, because now you've held collective healing energy instead of individual healing energy, and that's a whole different thing. You know, one person can do some amazing things in this world, but when we come together as a group and our energy becomes aligned, miracles can happen. And when you sit in a circle of miracle energy like that, then it ups your ampage of your psychic abilities, your mediumship abilities, your healing abilities become more honed just from sitting in a group like that. So it's open to everyone, not just people who have chronic disease, but especially if you feel stuck in life. Come. If you're a spiritual worker or a shaman or a healer, and things just don't feel like they're flowing right for you. You know you're on the right path and everything, but you just don't know what's wrong. You know, why do I still feel this way? What is this feeling that I'm feeling? You come and you get some clarity on those things. And then you start to broadcast a brand new vibration. And it's created by the group.
Yep.
I'm just the leader of the group. I'm just helping to anchor that energy, but the whole group creates the energy. And the bigger the group, the more energy and the greater the growth in the individuals will be. And the group energy helps to change the energy you're broadcasting into the world. As you change the energy you broadcast into the world, you create a brand new reality. You create a brand new world that you're stepping into with brand new potentials. And that's what it's really about.
I feel like that happens on a daily basis for me.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure with a place like this, I mean, that's like what's going on here.
Well, I mean, since things really started ramping up and Anthony and I vibrated together in this existence, it's like somebody's turning up the dial twice as much as the day before.
Absolutely.
And it just keeps compounding and compounding. And he's just been able to help give it structure. Because it was feeling manic before he came into my life.
Well, that's the thing. When we get turned on, when something turns us on, it can be trauma, it can be an enlightenment. Anything can turn us on. Once that switch is flipped, there's raw power coming through us. But if we don't have any way to organize that power, it starts to drive us. And we don't want our power to drive us, because when our power starts to drive us, we don't heal. And then those unhealed sides of ourselves get seduced by that power. And as they get seduced by that power, they start to run your life. So you're actually empowering the lowest part of yourself in that scenario. And you don't do the healing, you don't do the growth, and then your whole life starts to fall into some type of chaos. And it doesn't matter if where you're sourcing from. It doesn't matter if you have an angelic being that's telling you information that's really pumping you up and giving you energy, or if you have some kind of demonic influence that is connecting to you and is whispering in your ear. It doesn't matter which one it is. The seduction's the same if we don't have the structure. If we don't develop ourselves morally, we cannot responsibly hold that power. The power drives us, and then the power crushes us, and our whole life becomes chaos. So that's why people who are naturals like ourselves need a structure, need some kind of foundation to grow these seeds on, so that the power becomes beauty instead of something that is corrupted by the lowest aspects of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I could feel that like right away. So I have visions of all these things before they happen. So I kind of knew that David was coming. I didn't know what he looked like, but I could feel it. I could feel it kind of coming. And when he arrived, it just was like really amazing to me how it lined right up with everything that I've just been having visions of over time.
Yeah.
What was I going to touch on? There was something.
One thing I wanted to say is that one of the main aspect of the Paqo Kuna tradition that has really drawn me in is it is fourth dimensional, and well, at least what we're practicing, and it's not based around psychedelics. Psychedelics are just such a small part of everything. It's just the key to unlock the door, and then the tradition nurtures and grows that.
Yeah.
Psychedelics have an important role to play, especially now that people are starting to understand how to therapeutically use them. They have an important role to play in our culture and in life, but they're not, like we were talking before,
the magic
show.
bullet.
They're not the magic bullet. If you're not enlightened, you're not going to get enlightened from the psychedelic. It's just going to show you your shadows. If you don't have an access to the light, probably you're not going to get it from the psychedelic. You might get a glimpse of the light, and that turns you on. But you really need the instruction, the mentoring, to foster that light and to grow it, because it's a very fragile seed. We call it mishki, which also means nectar, but it's fragile seed. And there's a metaphysical city in our tradition called Mishkayani, and it's a feminized spiritual city with feminized saints. And the name of it means the tenderness of the newly sprouted seed. And that's what happens to some people on psychedelics. When they have their enlightenment on psychedelics, they have this newly sprouted seed that just popped open inside of them, but it's very tender. And if it's not nurtured by something, if it's not nurtured by some tradition, it doesn't have to be an indigenous tradition, but some tradition that has deep roots, that can actually help them navigate their shadow, then when those shadows come, the seed dies. And they're in a worse position than they were before. So yeah, there's a reason for these plant teachers. They do teach us things. You know, like San Pedro that I was talking about. One of the things it teaches us is how to live from our heart, how to actually pop out of the head and get into the heart. And for people in our culture, that can be a hard thing, but just a few hours with that, they can learn how to do that. Now they have to have instruction, because you can't just take San Pedro every day to reinforce your state of being. In fact, if you did, it would be detrimental to you. So they need instruction to how to do that without the teacher plant, without the training wheels, without something else doing it for you.
Yeah, because it's like opening up a way. It opens up a door, like an energetic door. And if you don't know what to do with that energy, like I see that a lot. So with people who go on medicine journeys and things, and it turns out really good for them. They go on the medicine journey. They come back feeling pretty good. The mind's working in a new way. Their observation's different. And then it kind of falls back. And then, I need to go on another journey, because it's the medicine that's here and what's teaching me. It's not being integrated. It's not opening up the pathways.
Absolutely.
Just like how for us we work in Seiki lines. We work in lines of energy. On a deeper level, for me, I understand and feel it all as a living nervous system. I can see it pervade and touch and open. And as we work together, like we were talking about groups of people, groups of people are amazing when you bring a bunch of people together. It's not just like any people. These are people that are willfully coming to work in the spiritual space.
Absolutely.
That was the first thing I loved about going to the retreat, going to the Hatan Karpai last year.
Yeah.
That was the first time I ever got to sit in a room, not just with people, but sit in a room full of Paqos.
Absolutely.
And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And plus the land there and everything. And that's in Gore, Virginia, for anybody that wants to know. It's a beautiful place. And we visit some neighboring spaces in Maryland and Virginia.
Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia.
West Virginia.
Yeah, it's places that actually hold the collective consciousness that were sacred to the indigenous people of this region. And so over the years, I found these places that align with the same energies as places like Machu Picchu in Peru. And so we're using that. And they're also connected. Our work connects psyches between those sites. So that work. So yeah, if you want to join us, you can find that information. It's return/to/the/garden .wildheartsmedicine.com.
Yeah. You can also, what you want to do is you give us any links you want, and we'll put it on these.
Oh,
on
okay,
this,
great.
So that way
Yep.
it can show up. People can just pop onto it.
Awesome.
So the links will be in the description to check
Yes.
these things out.
All right, great.
Yeah, how cool is that? What else? Do you have any questions for that you
No,
have?
I'm really looking forward to that, to the initiation. I've spent a lot of time in West Virginia. I'm an avid backpacker. So
All right,
the
great. Well, you might know some of
the mountains
places
are my
around.
heavy place. Yeah, I've worked my way through all of the Monongahela National Forest.
Awesome.
That's what we've been doing for the past 6-7 years, and it
Awesome.
is such a special place.
It is. It really is. Mountain Mama. You know, yeah.
No doubt about it.
Well, this seems like a good place to.
Yeah, I can
And
cut
our-
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just feels
I
right.
think we covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we sure did. Zane, I
Lot
want to
of
thank you so
wisdom.
much for coming out here and being with us and being on this podcast. And
Absolutely.
we're going to do everything we can to work with you and work with everyone else and create a more beautiful dream. A beautiful
Sounds good to
world.
me, man.
I love you so
Yes.
much, Zane.
Love you
Thank
too,
so
man.
much.
I love you both.
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah.
David. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. This has been great.
This has been the Quantum Shamans presented by Moshe with David and Anthony. We look forward to seeing you next week for more insight into who you are and your place in the universe.